MIT student at the minute working on safety assurance of artificial intelligence, mainly in autonomous systems for safety critical applications. So this presentation, it looks at the AI from a social settings and how the current trend that uses AI among people in communities in general, namely using the famous platforms such as Facebook, Amazon, Google, LinkedIn, and so on. So what I will be discussing, I'm not going to go in details on what is AI technically, but I will give very high level understanding of the topic. I will, throughout the presentation, I will sort of demonstrate how AI is impacting the human society. I am focusing on the current platforms that we are familiar with. I will be discussing, for example, Facebook target marketing. It will be my sort of the specific case study. I will be addressing some challenges that we need to address that I feel as a system science, and hopefully by the end of it we can have a discussion and see how system science can help not just AI per se, but generally any new innovation that comes in and integrate itself in our society. So artificial intelligence, as most of you guys are familiar with, is everywhere. It's no escape from it. It's in factories, it is in the social care, it is in the distribution centers. It becomes, in fact, some may recognize it as the second industrial revolution, and they're associated with the artificial intelligence involvement in everyday lives of humanity. Just the way industrial revolutions has progressed humanity forward, AI is anticipated to progress humanity to even further extent. So technically speaking, there are two main types of artificial intelligence. There is the so-called the rule-based or symbolic AI, and there is the machine learning data-driven. So the main difference between the two is that the symbolic AI runs on an explainable, relatively explainable approach, where it's based on if, then, and while loops algorithms. While machine learning, it's more of a statistical, probabilistic, non-deterministic approach to inputs. So it takes inputs and it applies a statistical methodology with it, and it predicts or try to prophesize whether the input is to what is expected or not. So one way to think of the machine learning to be designed like the neural network, and it is actually also known as a neural network to be one of the themes of machine learning of artificial intelligence. One distinct difference between the two is that the rule-based AI is explainable, while the machine learning artificial intelligence is not explainable, or is very hard to reason of its decisions. Now, before I move on, I would like to press and ask the audience a question here. This is a statement that is been said by a CEO of a very known company, and I just want 2 to 3 one-word contribution from the audience to describe to me, what would you describe that organization? So the person who is in charge of the organization says, what's good for the world isn't necessarily what is good for my organization. Now, if I could ask for a couple of 3 contribution here to give me one-word description of that organization, what would you call it?
Religion.
Thank you, Dennis. Anyone can just...
Selfish.
Yeah, selfish. Okay.
Profit-oriented.
Say that again.
Profit-oriented.
Profit-oriented. Yeah, I like that. So
Yeah.
Survival.
what was it again?
Survival.
Survival. All right. Well,
I'd,
generally,
say,
you guys.
I'd call it upside down. You in nature, you never find top-down management. It's always bottom-up.
Okay. Other interesting thoughts in there.
Yes.
So basically, the next question I wanted to leave you in this slide is that, would you trust your every second of your life in the hand of the technology produced by that organization, let alone your children or your friends and families and so on? This is not for you to answer right now, but this is a food for thought for you. So data is everywhere. There's an estimation of 2.5 quintillion of data produced every day throughout the world. I mean, Google process at least, over 3.5 billion search queries. In fact, some economists consider data as the new oil. And the reason why it is considered as a new oil and as an economic drive lies on two main factors, which are two main applications, which are the advertisement and propaganda. So these two applications amplify extremely the usefulness of data. Now, in the past, traditionally, when it comes to advertisement, we had sort of used to what I call it a static approach in exposing humanity to products and ideas and so on. By static, I mean you see an advert coming out on TV, you see an advert on a poster, you see an advert coming in through a paper and so on. So these are static. Why? Because you expect it, the way you're exposed to it, you anticipate it, and it's not necessarily smart. It does not, it's just out there. It doesn't care what's your thinking. It doesn't care who's your friends are. It doesn't care who's your influencing are, and what are the things that triggers your mind, and what is the moment of the day that is best suited for you. So these are static. However, what AI, artificial intelligence, and data mining, and empowered with the data, gave the advertisement and propaganda a completely new level of influence. It targeted people to the extent of understanding exactly when, where, and how they can effectively affect your knowledge in your mind at that particular moment. Rather than make you exposed to it arbitrarily, no, they are smart. The technology itself is smart enough to understand you more than even you know yourself, and that is being researched in a quite extensively on that sense. And the reason why, because these advertisement techniques have combined data science with psychology, with attention engineering, and artificial intelligence. And there is a term that's called PsyOps, which is psychological operation. So companies such as Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, will include LinkedIn, and obviously used in YouTube and so on. What they do, they employ people who specialize in understanding how to better manipulate or better understand the human brain works in order to better perfect their artificial intelligence. This is the organization whose director made a statement saying what is good for the world isn't necessarily what is good for Facebook. For me, when I come across this, which is, I read this in the Insider news, when I read this, for me, that demonstrated basically the status quo, not for Facebook, but for the technology industry itself. Now, technology traditionally is meant to be a tool. However, because of the sophistication they involved, which is predominantly by the power of psychology and the power of the multitude of data points that collect from people to understand how they think, they managed to turn these tools from just tools to be actually goals. In fact, it becomes a goal, an intrinsic goal in people's daily lives in order to sort of achieve a particular hierarchy or to achieve a particular status within these social mediums. This is bringing me to question exactly the concept of Trojan viruses. Now, Trojan viruses, it's been there as far as the computer was known, right? Well, I say that, but it's already, it's been researched back in the 80s and been applied in the 90s. But what I found it fascinating is that while platforms, tell us about they are safe and secure and tell us about how they handle the Trojan viruses, and you've got the spam folder, you've got all this intelligence involved in it. The question that I asked myself when I researched into the applications and also the method that these companies use, what if the platform is the Trojan virus itself? Now, if we look into the definition of Trojan virus and you compare it, what these platforms are doing, you will find really nearly enough one-to-one mapping. And this is where I sort of thought about the idea that maybe what we are dealing with here is that it's just a Trojan horse business model. For example, one of the points that categorize a virus is there to gather data. All these platforms gather data. There are tools for spying. They do spy on all of us. And in fact, they're not only spying on all of us, say the word spying, they are also allowing other nations to spy on another nation. And we all know what happens in election 2016 or Brexit, and later on, I'll even show you how these tools have been misused, and with the knowledge of the the platforms themselves, and that led to actually loss of a human life in the form of a genocide. And that will come back later on in this discussion. So there are particular things about the Trojan virus, like for example, it takes advantage of users' vulnerabilities, and platforms use that in their terms and conditions. This endless thousands pages and pages telling you what they're doing, but they know the individual just wants to have a hassle-free life. They wouldn't necessarily read all the terms and conditions. They just want to go on with their life and improve their livelihood. And that's the part where these platforms really bank on their progress. So the Trojan business model, it's the reason why I call it Trojan horse. Not necessarily I'm saying they are evil. No, they're not. They're just doing business, right? It's just legitimate business. But what I see is that, unfortunately, their legitimate business, it's literally taking more from the individual than the business actually need. So obviously the business wants to maximize its profits. However, like maximizing profits versus ethical conduct, this is the trade-off that these platforms face on a daily basis. Now, the issue here that I see is that it's kind of like, right, when you specifically designate a group of engineers to target the human brain to the extent that they know how can they make the human brain attention stick on their platform, make the human brain attention to actually make a particular purchase. It doesn't affect only the purchase itself, but the question here, who's allowed to have that power? The power to influence people's brains, while innocent businesses, when I say innocent businesses, all businesses, they just want to make sales. Fantastic. And that's maybe say legitimate, business trading conduct. But when it comes to propaganda, how this power going to augment the propaganda and the misinformation around the internet and so on? And this is where I see is there is a term saying, when you're not paying for the product, you are the product. Now, when you combine this idea and also combine this concept with the operations they do, from gathering human data, from focusing human attention to their platforms or their technologies, you know, and maximizing that as much as is possible, is really, really not far away from actual farming. So what we're dealing here, these businesses actually are human farms. They cage in humans in their little worlds, keep them on this technology, minimize the need for the humans to actually go out there and communicate with other people in person, and transfer their consciousness down to the actual device itself, and just keep them there, harvest the data as much as possible. Which is funny, because I think this is more like a karma and a thing, because you know we caged animals to farm them for their eggs and meats, but now we got humans, you know, doing everything that they can in order to cage humans to farm them for their data. Now, I want to play a video for about 1 minute, and I'll show you to the extent that these companies use the technology, and this is only the tip of an iceberg.
Hi, I'm Dalton.
You guys hear it? Did you hear that?
Briefly.
I'm one of the founders of Dopamine,
Yes, it's okay.
Okay.
and I'm going to show. I'm one of the founders of Dopamine. Hi, I'm Dalton. I'm one of the founders of Dopamine, and I'm going to show you an example of brain hacking using the Dopamine API. As developers, our apps live or die by user retention. Even with the best developers and the most thoughtful designers, retention appears to be fickle and up to luck. This leaves an uncomfortable amount of success to chance. And the problem is only getting worse with the proliferation of apps and further fracturing of user attention. So how can an app cut through that noise and get their users to stick? Getting a user to stick isn't just a data or a design problem. It's a brain problem. And if we know anything about brains, which we do, we know that variable reinforcement is the glue that gets us to stick to a new behavior. If you reinforce someone at the perfect moment, they'll do that reinforced action much more and for much longer. This principle has been known in academia for a while now. And some bright authors are spreading the good news in papers and workshops. So we're not the first to get it. We're the first to use neuroscience and code to rigorize, optimize, and scale it.
Right. So the main part that I take from there is the term of perfect moment. And this is where I say, you know, you've got the static version of advertisements and propaganda, which is, you know, it doesn't know about your perfect moment. That perfect moment, it takes a lot of data to know you so much that it knows during the day, which day, during what time of the hour, what time that you are, is the perfect for you to be exposed to particular information. Now, the misuse case that I see from there, so what if the algorithm or the artificial intelligence synchronize, and it's obviously by the order of whoever is using it, synchronize the perfect moment of every individual of a particular community in a particular nation. Suppose this community is very politically and volatile, and in order to achieve some sort of political reasons, imagine this is perfect moment is synchronized for the entire nation, and all that is just illegitimate business. These platforms doesn't care about the misuse cases that, you know, this, and I'll show you how they don't care in a later on slide.
How might we?
So this is that comes to me to think, all right, so it sounds to me that technology is being turned now into something I call it a healthy versus toxic. A toxic technology is a technology that really provide this unhealthy psychological environment for their users, where literally the user is the used, not the user. And while you get the other half, I class it as the healthy technologies, which take that into consideration, which still give you the tools that you need. For example, DuckDuckGo. For example, you've got Telegram or Signal, I suppose, for WhatsApp. You've got MeWe. MeWe still, they still use the other the toxic technology applications, but they are far more better if you compare it to Facebook or Instagram as a social media. So this is an example of what these platforms do in terms of experimenting on their users. Facebook is one of the controversial experiments that Facebook done is they conducted an experiment on almost 700,000 users where they manipulated the users' emotions to understand how much they can do, so, and what actually triggers their emotion reactions. They literally made, they experimented on making the 700,000 people mood go down, yeah, and then bring their mood up, and then bring their moods down. Now, you can search. I've got the links for that, but for me, this is like, this is very alarming on the level of the intrusiveness that these companies are doing. Because out of that 700,000, how many of them are suffering from depression? How many of them suffering from anxiety? How many of them were having suicidal thoughts? So when you brought people down, mood down, how has that affected their livelihood and well-being? And Facebook has got these papers out there to explain exactly what they've done. But they say people signed up and they agreed to it because they said okay on their consent. There is another research they've done. So what they here examined, okay, so how can we use your friends to impact your decisions? So they will show you a piece of information, and then they will tell you how many of your friends have used that information. And then with that, they will testing whether you engage even more, or you make the purchase, or you mainly make a purchase, or you engage with the content. And they established that the stronger the bond you have with the particular people, then the more likely you engage and the more likely you buy this information. So in another way, so all they need to do is that find out who's your closest friends, who are your closest relationship to, who have, and they can do that from your messages, from your posts, from your interactions and all that. And then they display to you the information with their names underneath it, telling you that these people actually also watched it or they didn't. And if they don't have that information about you, then all they need to show you how many people out there who actually used it. So this has led to some controversial issues, for example, undermining democracy. And this is the part that I'm really, really concerned about, because yes, it's fantastic that we can target customers in a pinpoint and do all this fantastic advancement in advertisement. But what is the trade-off? What are we selling in return for that? The question I have is that a worth technology to be rewarded? Is a worthwhile technology to be rewarded with our attention or with our time? Because in the longer term, this technology will be misused and have been misused. Myanmar is the saddest, I think, the most scary part of this, because what Facebook has done, it allowed an authoritarian dictatorship commit genocide and justify their genocide by using these target marketing that knows the perfect moment of the individuals that they want to amplify the hate against. And also they utilize the echo chambers, and that echo chambers, I feel, is a real sort of Achilles heel for democracy and also for people's freedom. So the part that I am certainly like really concerned about is the persuasive AI, because what you've seen so far is a demonstration of production of an artificial intelligence knows the humanity so much that it knows how to persuade you. So in a way, so even if you oppose a particular opinion, even if you don't like something, or it knows you so much how to target you. Even if you think that you're smart and you will not be affected by its impact, the persuasive AI will be able to find a way to get to you. Now, one area that I believe system science can help with is the responsible innovation. So responsible innovation is to do with, when we create an innovation, how ethically it is to actually conduct it among society. And I believe this responsible innovation view is basically the area where system science can help towards, and in order to create tools or create or employ system thinking within this responsible innovation to advance responsible innovation applications for regulators and also for organizations in general. So I think I'm going over time, so I'm going to skip this for now. So this is the example that I want you to consider. This is a research has been done in a university where the researcher is doing his PhD, and the research is about producing capsules of a hormone that known as oxytocin. And oxytocin is basically a hormone of love. And this is the feeling that you get when you're in a loving relationship or you're in a strong friendship with someone and so on. And the research is about how can we make it as a medicine. Now, the question that I want to ask the audience here as a system science, what can we do to make regulators understand the social impact when you put love in capsules? Because now you remove love from having, we already going through this, distancing each other, we don't talk to each other because of these social media and all these platforms. Now, when you change love into capsules, how is that going to affect humanity? So this is my last slide, and this is why I want to leave the audience for discussion. What do you think individually system science can do in order to help regulators and organizations to better understand their innovations? Yes, profit is first, but how can we as a system science, from our knowledge, from our concept, be able to draw some sort of an appreciation of any innovation that we're producing? That's the end of my presentation, and thank you very much. I'll listen to everyone's opinions in that sense.